Igor Sancho, welcome to Talking Tendons.
Thank you very much, Peter. How are you?
Very good, very good. We're going to dive into an episode here today. Igor is a PhD student. He's my PhD student, as well as he has a supervisory team, and he's published a couple of studies this year. We're going to talk about one of them very briefly, and I'm going to fire some questions to you for purposes of trying to translate some of these findings to clinicians. So the title of the paper is, it's in Physical Therapy and Sport, published a few weeks ago, Education and Exercise Supplemented by Pain-Guided Hopping Intervention for Male Recreational Runners with Mid-Torsion Achilles Tendinopathy, a single cohort feasibility study. So these are going to be brief questions, okay? I know you're, you're Spanish and you want to sort of, talk for a long time, but in the Talking Tendons podcast, I'm going to keep you to brief answers, okay? So here we go. The first question is, why did you do this study?
Okay, we know that recreational runners following current treatments for Achilles tendinopathy, they still have some functional impairments after treatment. And we do know that plyometric training is a very, very used approach in sports because it improves power, improves leg stiffness, improves running performance. So we thought about combining both and see if doing some plyometric training in people with tendinopathy could have a good outcome.
Okay. So it was basically to try and combine the usual strength training that people do for these problems, plus some, as you say, plyometric type training to try and recover people and improve their performance. That sounds good. Now, were there any studies previously that have used this type of plyometric training in Achilles rehab?
Yes, there are, but not very specifically reported. So they mention they do some plyometric but they don't specifically say what type of hopping they do, for example. And most of the studies, the trend is to do first strengthening, and then once you are strong, then go to more fast and high loads. But we don't really know if this is the way we have to do it or not. And we wanted to test if introducing it pain guided could be a safe intervention, and that's why we did this feasibility study.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you've touched on the safety of it. What would be the reasons why everyone is not doing? I mean, is it a common thing for people to be doing hopping and these types of interventions for Achilles? What's your impression about that?
Well, if we think about the Achilles tendon, it's the tendon, the energy storage tendon par excellence, no? So what it does, it's the tendon for that stores and recoils the energy to improve the efficiency in locomotion. So these tendons are made to store to cope with high loads. Okay, so if we have someone that is injured in this tendon, we need to recover this tendon for that function. So we are talking about people that want to hop, to run, to do sprinting, and we need to recover them for that, not just for heel raises or for seated calf raises.
And that makes a lot of sense. There may be some use of plyometric interventions by clinicians, but maybe not as broadly as possible. And do you think there's some, potential barriers like, people thinking that it might flare Achilles problems up, or other barriers?
Yeah, sure. Of course. I mean, like they are high loads for the tendon, and that's why most, or not most, but a lot of clinicians might be a bit scared of applying some plyometric exercises, because it's quite likely patients with Achilles tendinopathy might flare up, and then if you are treating a patient and he flares up, then it's very possible that he's not going to trust you anymore. So on one side, we have the clinicians that might be scared of applying this kind of intervention, and but also sometimes we have the problem with patients that once they start feeling good, they can do heel rises, then they don't have pain for daily activities. They go back to return to sport, and that doesn't mean that they are ready to go, or they are totally recovered.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I sort of prefer the word apprehensive rather than scared.
Okay.
I know scared's got a bit of stigma to it, if we're saying that. that's just a small point.
Okay. Yeah, you are the English-speaking one, so yeah, I guess that's the word.
Okay, now you've done a single cohort feasibility study. What is that?
Well, it was just a study with a small sample to see. We wanted to see the primary outcomes of the feasibility. We want to see if we are able to recruit and retain people. If we wanted to see what the adverse events may be, if the exercise adherence and fidelity was going to be all right. And all the aim of this feasibility study is to see. I mean, if we see that it's a safe intervention, the next step would be to go into an RCT to compare a treatment approach, including hopping versus current treatments.
Great. So one of the key things was safety, which we'll get on to later.
Yeah.
So I just want to now go into, can you give me a very brief description of what you did in terms of methods?
Yeah, so basically what we did is we recruited 13 patients, and we provided them some education and some pain-guided progressive exercise. So the exercise program was divided in 4 levels depending on their pain. So if they had a flare-up or when pain was high, they were basically doing isometrics. If pain was acceptable, then they started doing some kinetic change exercises. But once they were able to cope with 20 double leg hops, and that was not flaring them up next day, then they were starting to do some double leg hops every second day. And as soon as they were able to cope with 10 single leg hops, they were stopping doing double leg jumps and shifting to 1 day of single leg hops and 2 days of running. So everything was progressed based on pain.
Excellent. Okay, so it was as the title says, it was a pain-guided program, and you progressed everything based on pain. Okay, that's great. And can you give me a bit more detail, just briefly, in a sentence or two, what was the actual hopping intervention? What were the progressions?
What were the progressions? So when they were able to do 20 double leg hops, we gave them four lines of exercises. So the first one was 3 sets of 60 double leg hops. The second one was three sets of 30 double leg hops with a more stiff knee strategy, so more ankle-based hopping. Then they were progressing to 3 sets of 5 double leg hops forward and backwards. Okay, and the last one was 3 sets of 5 double leg hops forward and backwards, but onto a step and faster, so increasing the rate of force development, increasing the speed. Yeah, so they had to do each line twice in 2 different days, and if that was okay, the third day they were progressing to one more line. Okay, so yeah.
I just wanted to ask on that, how much pain did they have when they were doing the hopping? Because that's you're getting to hopping onto boxes and things like that. How much pain did they have?
I mean, they were coping with it. We told them, if you are able to do the hopping and with acceptable pain, something below 3 out of 10, and next day you are still the same, then that's perfect. Okay, if you flare up, but in 48 hours when you have to go back to hopping, that's recovered. You continue the plan. But if in 48 hours the pain is still higher than 3 out of 10, then you stop or regress the hopping. Okay, that's the guidelines we gave them.
Very good, very good. Okay. Now I want to ask you about what you found. So can you just briefly tell me, so obviously this was a feasibility study. So initially, based on your initial aim of testing the feasibility, what did you find?
Well, we found that the feasibility outcomes were quite good in terms of rate of recruitment, rate of retention, and response to outcomes. Okay. We also found that the acceptability of the intervention, so the feedback that we had from our participants was quite good. So the positive aspects were the education we provided, the improvement they were feeling alongside the program, and the continuous feedback we gave them. That was rated as positive things of the program. The negative ones were the time burden. So it was too many exercises or too many days that they had to do things, and the difficulties to get daily to the gym. That's the worst rated aspects. Okay, and in terms. Sorry.
Go on. Sorry.
In terms of exercises. In general, the adherence was 70% and the fidelity was 50%. But this is a little bit tricky, because when we see what they did per exercise, we can see that the exercise where they had to go to the gym had the worst adherence. Okay. But fidelity for those was not bad, and adherence was very good, or the best, for exercises that they could do at home or not at home but anywhere, like for example for hopping, for double leg jumping, for single leg hopping, for running, activities that they like doing, and they recognize, like things that it's going to tell them back to running. Adherence was good, but however fidelity was very poor. So this is funny, because they said education was good, but then when you see what they did, it's like, yeah, education was good, but you did nothing about what I told you to do. Okay, so yeah.
Could it be that people took the education and thought, yep, the education is good, but they did what they wanted to in terms of the exercise? Or could it also be that maybe the education that they meant was good was the education related to pain guidance and how much pain they should have and other aspects as well?
Yeah, so I think the way they controlled pain management course were good. They learned that, and they accepted that, and they interiorize that. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know how to say in English. But however, I mean, the days they had to do single leg hopping, I gave them some guidelines of what exactly they had to do each day, and they didn't do that. Okay, so yeah, today I have to do single leg hops, but I do whatever I want. Okay, so that's something that we need to improve. Yeah,
that's interesting. So I guess from that there are things that you could take forward to future studies in terms of designing or redesigning the intervention, but it also, and maybe, as you say, making it a bit less time intensive, but also there are lessons potentially in that from a point of view of what people are doing, and how much they need to do to get benefit. So do you think they would have needed to do all? So there was a lot there. There was the rehab that you had, as well as all the hopping that they progressed to and the running. Do you think they necessarily need to do all of that to get benefit?
No, I don't think so. So in the beginning, we tried to give them. We were very ambitious, and we tried to give them a lot of exercises. But for example, doing isometrics daily in a seated calf rise machine that asks that patients need to go to the gym to do this. It's like something that I wouldn't repeat. So maybe if they have a flare up and the pain is they have a pain that doesn't cope with isotonics, for example, then I would ask them to do isometrics. But once they are okay and they are doing single leg hops running, I would exclude that, for example.
Yeah, that's good, and I guess that's a lesson, and that's what you're doing a feasibility study for, and that is to learn that, you know, this is acceptable, this is maybe not as acceptable, and we can then and you can then go on and define the intervention that you want to do. The other thing I want to ask you about from feasibility point of view is the adverse events.
Yeah.
How would the adverse events?
Well, that's again the same thing. So what?
I'll ask you another way. How many Achilles ruptures did you have?
None. No, we didn't.
What adverse events did you have?
Well, we have two guys that have medial gastrocnemius tears, and one had a lateral knee ligament tear. But this is also funny because these are the guys that we ask them not to do, try to avoid explosive exercises. And the gastroc...
just backtrack there a second. Why did you ask them to avoid explosive exercises?
Well, because... I mean, like if they were exercising more than usually, they were doing a lot strengthening daily. Plus, if they which that's already high loads. They were doing hopping, they were doing some running, and if you increment some general loads, it's quite likely that you are going to do a peaking load, right? So yeah, I mean, these guys, one of them got injured doing uphill running sets. Okay, the other one got a gastrocnemius tear playing basketball, and the third one had a knee problem playing football. So these guys were already getting better, because otherwise I don't understand they could go and do these things. Okay, yeah. So none of the people, no one in the study got injured while doing the intervention exercises, but exercises that were outside intervention. So it's quite likely that maybe they were fatigued, or I don't know. We will try to find out, or we should try to find out the reason for this. But
so just to get it straight, what you just said there, they basically, you had instructed them, you've got to follow the program and progress gradually to those, you know, very high loading activities, but they didn't follow that advice.
That's it. So I mean, if they were doing them, they could continue doing them, but these guys were not doing this kind of exercises. They were just running and trying to get better from. Yeah, sorry.
You had a full progression of getting back to running, and then, you know, fast running, etc. And that's all described in the paper, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So these guys, for example, had personal challenges. So one of them was a rugby referee that he wanted to get back for the season. Another one was playing basketball, and the season was starting. So they were thinking about, I need to get better, you know, to be okay for the season.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, the last thing I want to ask you is about, did people actually get better from the intervention? So how long did you follow them up for? What outcomes, and did they get better?
Well, we followed them up for 12 weeks. And yeah, the improvement in pain and function were important. There was a effect size of 0.74 for visa A, and hopping pain during hopping also decreased significantly. We have the strength measurements of the kinetic change. For example, triceps uriae strength increased significantly for both standing and seated calf rises. For the kinetic change, we had significant improvement for hip abduction and for leg extension. But we didn't see changes for leg curl and for hip extension. And the important ones, so the findings of this study, or something that no one has reported before, is that we found important or significant changes for the hopping outcomes. So after 12 weeks, these participants were able to hop in a more stiff way, and they were able to hop in a stiff way during more time, and that was significant. So the duration of hopping and the stiffness during hopping had increased significantly. And if we had previously done a case control study, and if you compare the outcomes after 12 weeks of hopping, so the duration of hopping and also the stiffness of hopping, these values are better than controls, than the values of the controls in baseline. Okay, so this is telling us that that the same thing happens with injured people. So the thing that happens with healthy people happens with injured people, with people with Achilles tendinopathy. If you do plyometric training, you improve. Okay, so it's something that has not been reported before.
Okay, so there's a lot there, and I'll get people to get into the paper if they want more details. But I just want to ask you two quick follow-up questions. One, given this is a single cohort study without a control group or placebo, what contributed to the improvement?
Well, that's something we cannot know. I mean, we don't know if the education is what makes them better, if it's the strengthening, if it's the hopping, we don't know. My feelings is that the hopping it could be related to this, but as you said, we don't have a control group, so we cannot assure that.
Yeah, it might have just been that, it might have just been nothing, the things you mentioned. It might have just been time that got them better. And I'm not suggesting I think that's the case, but I'm just saying that given this is a single cohort feasibility study, it could have been time. It could have been the fact that they came to the first appointment, they saw you with your beard, they were quite scared of you, and they thought, I'm going to do exactly what I'm just going to tell this person I'm better because I'm worried. It could have been any of those things. There's no, and that's I think an important point for people, clinicians, that this is just a single cohort study. All we've shown here is that it's safe to do hopping with some caveats as you've described in the paper.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it's the next step is important. Now the second follow-up question that I was going to ask you on that is. What is so just the last thing we'll finish on this. What about stiffness of the you've talked about stiffness now. What is that, and how do you know that change was good?
Well, we know if we think about the stiffness, we are talking about leg stiffness. Okay, so if we consider the whole leg as a spring that stores and releases energy, now the spring we have is more efficient. Okay, so it's able to cope with more load, and that's going to provide us better performance, better hopping performance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's something probably also we could say that we want to be sure that the change in stiffness is because what we've measured in this paper is leg stiffness.
Yes.
And we don't know. One of the things we don't know is the individual contributions of that leg stiffness. So whether they're knee or whether they're Achilles or whether they're from other areas, and what's changing. So although it probably is positive, I agree with you. It's something that we should be clear on, that we probably haven't measured it in terms of performance. How does it affect their performance, like running or ability and any other abilities? But you'd imagine it's positive because they've improved with their visa and all the other measures there. But that's just another point, just to be clear, I guess, about what we've done. with the stiffness side of things. Now, Igor, I'm gonna throw it over to you now. Is there anything you want to add in about this or about anything else that you're doing? You might. You're going to be at the Barcelona conference. When is it? Next week?
Yeah, next Tuesday. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yes, I'm presenting this feasibility study.
And that sounds like a really great meeting. I wish I was. Well, I was invited to go, but I can't go because of the imminent third child arrival. But it's yeah, it sounds like a good meeting. So enjoy that. Yeah, get back to writing your PhD, please.
Okay. Okay, Peter. Thank you very much. We will miss you there, but I guess you are you are going to be pretty busy at home right now. Okay.
Great to talk to you, Igor. Speak to you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.